Imagine the unthinkable. Someone drops the atomic bomb. So what happens next? During this book review, a scenario that feels like it belongs to history, but is closer to our reality than most would admit, will reflect in vivid detail what would unfold. In her new book, Nuclear War: A Scenario, best-selling author Annie Jacobsen takes us behind the scenes into the minds of the people whose job is to prepare for the unimaginable. From military strategists to disaster planners, we'll uncover what really happens when the countdown to nuclear conflict begins and ends. This book is about the plans no one wants to think about, but everyone needs to know. Welcome to That's Life, I Swear. This podcast is about life's happenings in this world, happenings that conjure up such words as intriguing, frightening, life-changing, inspiring, and more. I'm Rick Barron, your host. That said, here's the rest of this story. So let's talk about the book. Books like Annie Jacobsen's Nuclear War: A Scenario are indispensable for grasping the complex and disturbing realities behind the decision to deploy nuclear weapons. Annie, also the author of The Pentagon's Brain, has invested over a decade conducting interviews with numerous experts and studying vast amounts of recently declassified material. Nuclear war is madness, she asserts, noting that every expert she spoke to recognizes this truth, yet the threat of such devastation still looms large. Her book takes you through an all-out nuclear war strike, which would unfold and finish in just 72 minutes. Think about that for a moment. The numbers alone are horrifying. A single 1 megaton bomb in the Pentagon could kill 1 million people within minutes, with the ensuing conflict likely bringing humanity to the brink of destruction. Jacobsen estimates that by the time it ends, at least 5 billion lives will be lost either through the blast or nuclear fallout. 5 billion people. To put that in perspective, there are currently just a little over 8 billion people in the world today. Now here is an analogy of what 8 billion represents. Imagine the entire population of Earth, all 8 billion people, standing shoulder to shoulder. Now if we arranged them in a single line, it would wrap around the equator 300 times. But the toll doesn't stop there. Annie frames this as not just genocide, but an event leading to mass extinction, exacerbated by nuclear winter and a devastated ozone layer. As long as the potential for nuclear war remains, she warns, the survival of humanity hangs in the balance. Jacobsen describes the first 24 minutes of a nuclear strike by envisioning a chilling scenario in which North Korea launches a missile at the United States. The motivation, whether Kim Jong-un's paranoia, resentment, or unpredictability, matters less than the mechanics, since 9 nations possess nuclear weapons, and in many cases, the decision to unleash mass destruction rests solely in the hands of one leader, be it Kim, Vladimir Putin, or even the President of the United States. Millions of lives hinge on the judgment of a single individual. Now, people may not know this, but during Watergate, Defense Secretary James Schlesinger, fearing an unstable Nixon might order a strike, reportedly instructed military leaders to clear any nuclear command with him, or Secretary of State Henry Kissinger first. In Annie's scenario, the U.S. fires interceptors to neutralize the missile fired by Korea, but they fail, unsurprisingly, given America's interceptor system has a poor track record. She says with just 44 interceptors in total, the U.S. program is more symbolic than effective. As the crisis deepens, the doomsday clock starts ticking. Annie walks us through each minute, even down to the seconds, as the U.S. president has a mere 6 minutes to decide whether to launch a retaliatory strike on North Korea, risking the destruction of the region and potentially drawing Russia and China into the conflict. A central theme in Annie's work is the alarming speed at which frightening decisions must be made. In her scenario, global destruction takes just 72 minutes to unfold. Annie introduces another unsettling idea. In the chaos of war, especially nuclear war, even the best laid plans are bound to unravel. History shows that the fog of war leads to disruptive strategies, countless mistakes and miscalculations. And with nuclear conflict, the uncertainty is even greater. Since no one has experienced a full-scale nuclear exchange, all the Pentagon's carefully modeled projections may be worthless. The unpredictable consequences of panic, infrastructure collapse, military breakdowns, and ensuing violence are impossible to foresee fully. In any scenario, North Korea fires additional missiles, including a high-altitude detonation that wipes out the U.S. power grid, which a former senior CIA official described as electric Armageddon. Annie repeatedly emphasizes that nuclear war has no rules, but that's not entirely accurate. One thing is certain. Beyond the immense loss of life, nuclear war would plunge any survivors into complete chaos. Even Nikita Khrushchev, former leader of Russia, once remarked that the living would envy the dead in its aftermath. Now, is there anything that can be done to prevent such a catastrophe? Annie places much of the blame on the doctrine of deterrence, which has been central to the U.S. policy for decades. The logic is simple. Adversaries are discouraged from launching a nuclear strike because they know it would trigger a massive and uncontrollable retaliation. However, Annie warns that deterrence, while effective so far, is only reliable until it fails. An accident, a miscommunication, or the reckless decision of an unstable leader could easily trigger a nuclear conflict. If that happens, her grim vision of the future becomes all too real. And with no backup plan, the failure of deterrence leaves the world with no way out. Up to this point, Annie has outlined the grim reality of nuclear conflict. But this is where the questions arise. What is her alternative? If she advocates for the complete destruction of nuclear weapons, she owes her readers an explanation of how that could realistically be achieved. How do we transition from our current situation to a world without nuclear weapons? The theory of deterrence was developed after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by Bernard Brodie, who recognized that nuclear weapons had fundamentally altered the nature of warfare. Deterrence was seen as the only way to prevent aggression from rival powers without resorting to war. Entire schools of thought support that the Cold War stayed cold because of nuclear deterrence. Some also argue that the existence of atomic bombs is why we're not currently at war with Russia over its invasion of Ukraine, and the same might be said about the tensions surrounding Taiwan currently. Now let's talk about the author. Annie Jacobsen is a prominent American investigative journalist and best-selling author, known for her in-depth explorations of government secrets, national security, and military history. Her work has shed light on some of America's military and intelligence operations' most intriguing and controversial aspects. Born in 1967 in Connecticut, Annie showed an early aptitude for writing and investigative work. She pursued her passion for journalism at Princeton University, graduating in 1989 with a degree in philosophy and literature. This educational background would later prove invaluable in her approach to complex, nuanced topics in her writing career. After graduation, Jacobsen polished her skills as a journalist, contributing to various publications. Her work has appeared in the Los Angeles Times Magazine and the National Review. Her journalistic endeavors laid the groundwork for her future as an author, developing her keen eye for detail and her ability to uncover hidden truths. Annie's writing is also characterized by her meticulous research, often drawing from declassified documents. And additionally, she has a narrative style that brings historical events to life. So what drew my interest to this book? Over time, I've been looking for information on what the lead-up to an atomic war would entail, but more so on the aftermath. Annie's book provides that scenario. Annie's book, Nuclear War, A Scenario, offers a deeply and very unsettling exploration of how nuclear war might unfold in today's geopolitical climate. One of the book's most chilling aspects is its vivid, almost cinematic portrayal of atomic escalation, tracing the steps from initial tensions through miscalculations and human errors that spiral out of control. Annie masterfully balances the real-world historical precedents with speculative fiction, making the possibility of a nuclear conflict feel disturbingly close. Her sharp attention to the psychological impact on world leaders, military personnel, and civilians alike reveals the sheer terror that would ensue at every level of society. This revelation was not only interesting, but absolutely horrifying. Equally disturbing is her exploration of the fallout, a future where survivors face not just radiation, but societal collapse, environmental devastation, and the moral dilemmas of rebuilding amid chaos. The book's gripping realism forces the reader to confront how delicate the global balance of power truly is and the catastrophic consequences that could arise from a single wrong move. Jacobson's meticulous research into classified operations and nuclear policy heightens a sense of dread, showing how close we've come to such a scenario in the past. This book is as much a warning as it is a gripping narrative, forcing readers to reflect on the precariousness of our world. So what can we learn from this book? What's the takeaway? Well, I'll cut to the chase. After reading the book, I came to the conclusion there would be no winners in an all-out nuclear war. None. Annie's book provides a chilling look at the realities of nuclear warfare, and a couple of key lessons are consequences of nuclear conflict. Jacobson describes the catastrophic human, environmental, and geopolitical impacts of nuclear war, from immediate destruction to lasting fallout. Additionally, technology and cybersecurity. She addresses the growing role of AI and cyber threats in nuclear strategy, raising concerns about system vulnerabilities that could trigger conflict. Overall, nuclear war, a scenario, serves as a wake-up call to the continuing threat of nuclear weapons and the need for global cooperation to mitigate these dangers. It emphasizes that nuclear warfare is not just a relic of Cold War history, but a present and future risk. Well, there you go, my friends. That's life, I swear. For further information covered in this episode, I invite you to visit my website, which you can find on Apple Podcasts for show notes and the episode transcript. As always, I thank you for the privilege of you listening and your interest. Be sure to subscribe here or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. See you soon.